Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, June 23rd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 71 days. The game against Michigan in 155 days. Today's show was supposed to be yesterday's show. And then quarterback Tavian St. Clair committed, and then we had a whole different show to do last night. So now we're doing a new one today. And we're going to be kind of recapping the month of camps at Ohio State and some players who maybe made some big impressions on us. Some big impressions on the Ohio State coaching staff, may have earned some offers, and moved themselves up Ohio State's board in their various positions and recruiting years. Lots of guys to talk about. June is always a really, really interesting month because you get to see a lot of players coming right to Columbus, making it very easy for us, and get to see guys, in a lot of cases, going head-to-head with other top players from their classes. So a really good chance to do some evaluation for guys who will be the future of the Ohio State football program, and in many cases, other programs around the country. So my guest today is Tony Gerdeman. He was there for pretty much maybe all of the camps this year. He made it to more camps this year than I did, which I think that's the first time, Tony, that's happened. But you were there, I think, for everyone this month. We were definitely there earlier this week when Tavian St. Clair and Ryan Montgomery went head-to-head at the 7-on-7 camp. Tavian St. Clair obviously ended up committing. We talked all about those guys on yesterday's show. But was there another quarterback during the course of the month that kind of jumped out to you as someone who was, really a name to know for the future now that Ohio State has its 2024 and 2025 quarterbacks?
Yeah, and, in fact, there was a couple of 2025 kids that looked good, but it's like, well, if you're not Ryan Montgomery or Tavian St. Clair, you're in the wrong year, maybe gray shirt, something like that. But there was a 2026 kid out of Tampa Jesuit named Will Griffin who we saw the first or second week of camp, and he for a guy going into his junior season, he looked like a sophomore Tim Tebow in terms of like build. Like he looked like a college sophomore, and he threw the ball probably the best of anybody that day. It was a windy conditions, and pretty much all of camp has kind of been a bit breezy, but he was able to cut through the wind with ease. I think he had the strongest arm that we saw probably the entire camp. And so he ended up with an Ohio State offer after camp, which wasn't a surprise. I think everybody who saw him that day expected it. So I'd say he's one to watch in 2026. And now that you've got your 2025 guy in the fold, I guess you start working on the 2026 guys.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that is someone who's going into his sophomore year of high school, and it's amazing. You think about how much guys will grow in the next couple of years and how much things can change. But yeah, you are potentially starting to look 3 classes out already, which is a little bit crazy. And the idea of the class of 2026 is a little bit personally upsetting to me as someone with a kid who's going to be a class of not all that long after that. But that's my issue, not yours. Let's talk about running backs instead. This is always a spot where you get to see a ton of guys come through. The Ohio State campus always filled with top wide receiver prospects, top running back prospects. This year was no exception. 2024, it feels like you kind of have a sense for where that class is going in terms of running back recruiting. 2025, though, it's wide open. They're in on so many different top guys. There were we're talking before the show. We had 5 names that we looked at, and it was like, well, it could be pretty much any combination of these guys: Jordan Davison, Byron Lewis, Bo Jackson, Torrey Blaylock, Marquise Davis. Which of those guys, those are all, potentially Ohio State caliber running backs. Which of those guys do you think we're a little ahead of some of the others, or really stood out to you just individually?
I think Jordan Davis, it was interesting. Jordan Davis was the first to work out, and he was alone. He was the first or second day, Jordan Davis. And so we get to watch him all by himself, and obviously looked fantastic. And then in one day, it was Bo Jackson and Marquise Davis and Torrey Blaylock, and Davis and Jackson are the Ohio kids. So, you're there to watch him. And then this Texas kid named Torrey Blaylock, who also holds an offer, really stands out, was the quickest guy of them all, outstanding. And, Bo Jackson, this is my, third time seeing him. He always looks good. First time seeing Marquise Davis. So, like, if you're looking for a pecking order, and then, as you said, Byron Lewis looked good on Wednesday, and like all of these guys hold offers, and they could all join the fold at some point. And this is going to be fascinating. I'm sure Mark and Kevin have talked about this on any of their shows, but any of these five guys, two of these five guys, like they're taking 3 running backs in the 2024 class. I don't expect them to take 6 in 2 years, but these are all 5 guys who I think can play in the Big Ten, can play at Ohio State. And Jordan Davison is a 5-star guy, and I haven't talked to all of these guys, but Ohio State might lead for all of them, and so that is it's a great situation to be in. But how does Tony Alford handle that pecking order? If number 4 wants to commit, number 4 is good enough to play at Ohio State, but you're like, well, 1, 2, and 3 could pop at any moment as well. So it'll be interesting. I think you hold a spot for Jordan Davison, and they may not have to hold it long. And then is at that point whoever the next is, or do you it'll be fascinating to see how Tony Alford handles this, how you hold them off. Also, knowing that the whole Mark Fletcher thing is something that always sticks with me, and probably sticks with Ohio State as well. When you've got this guy in the fold for a long time, and then he leaves for an NIL opportunity. So even if you accept a commit or two, do you continue to stay in contact with the other guys just in case something happens? And once you accept 1 or 2 of these commitments, do the other guys just, I'm gone, like this is it? You've made your choice. Now I'm going to go find somewhere else to be.
Yeah, it feels like that running back recruiting in 2024 and 2025 could really be its own show, which, spoiler alert, if I'm saying that out loud, you're probably going to have a show about all that in a week or two. But it just, with the fact that they didn't take a running back last year, and the fact that they only took 1 the year before that, you have to take a deeper class in 2024 and 2025 to get those numbers back up. Yeah, you can get a guy through the portal, but if you can bring in guys and have them go through from freshman year and on, running back is a spot where you can get on the field early if you're ready. I mean, we just saw that last year with Dallin Hayden, had a big game against Maryland towards the end of the season. We've seen it with J.K. Dobbins. We've seen it with Mike Weber. I mean, guys get on the field and play early. You would expect that to potentially happen again for at least some of these guys, as Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson and Chip Trainum and all the kind of veteran guys, potentially Evan Pryor. I mean, all those guys could potentially be off to the NFL after this season. So probably not going to lose all of them, but you might lose some of them. So yeah, there's going to be room on that depth chart for some of those running backs. How do the 2024 and 2025 classes shake out? That's going to be really interesting to follow. And as you said, all the sort of game theory and strategy in terms of who you take a commitment from and when, that's going to be really interesting to watch. Wide receivers, always very interesting to watch at these Ohio State camps, because Brian Hartline, Mylan Graham was one of the committed players who came, and you talk to him, and it's just anytime you have a chance to work with Brian Hartline, you want to work with Brian Hartline because he's considered the best in the business, or at least one of the best in the business. So you're going to end up getting better working with him every day. But there were a lot of top wide receivers who came in this month. Chris Henry Jr. may be the biggest name. He's also a couple years away. Adrian Wilson, we saw him this week. He was playing on the house team at the 7-on-7 tournament. But, was there a wide receiver who kind of jumped out to you as someone who, might have either earned an offer or maybe is, the bar to be a wide receiver at Ohio State right now is very, very, very high. And you saw some great players who, camped and then still didn't get offers. So who kind of jumped out to you at wide receiver this month?
Yeah, I mean, I would mention Adrian Wilson out of Pflugerville, Texas, Weiss High School, who is a top 200 player by all of the networks, is the number 36 player nationally on Three's network, and the number 7 wide receiver in the nation. And he camped on Wednesday, hoping for an Ohio State offer, and I don't think it has come yet. And he was a guy that was really, really good. His quarterback much of the time was Ryan Day's son, RJ Day. And so talking with Adrian Wilson afterwards, he said Ohio State would be at the top. If the Buckeyes were to offer, they would be right there, and, he might just commit on the spot, basically. And, I asked him what was it about Ohio State, and he just said the family atmosphere, the opportunities. He just said it was cool. Like, my quarterback during the games was Ryan Day's son. That gives you an idea of the family connection of the program. But he was outstanding. He's like 6'1", 6'2", but plays bigger than that, and was a red zone weapon for RJ and the other quarterbacks as well. And fast enough and big enough, and one of the top receivers in the nation, one of the top receivers in Texas. And as you just said, he's a 2025 guy, so things are still early, and Ohio State's still evaluating, and so they're waiting, and they'll see, and he'll continue to work. But that's in years past that would be an automatic offer, and now it's like, well, keep it up, keep up the good work, and a little punch on the shoulder, and we'll talk to you later, that sort of thing. It's an interesting time to be alive, Tom.
It is an interesting time to be alive, and it is, following Ohio State wide receiver recruiting is just, it feels like Brian Hartline throws out offers and just, unless you're one of the top 6 to 10 wide receivers in the nation, you have a very small chance to get in the class, because it feels like you're going to get 3 of the top, say, 10 wide receivers in the class virtually every year, and then that leaves maybe 1 spot for someone else. So it is very, very exclusive company. We saw Jackson Wiley, Michael Wiley's son, from Olentangy. He had a very, very impressive day. I only watched like 1.5 of their games, and I saw him score a couple long touchdowns. He still doesn't have an offer. That's an Ohio State legacy from Central Ohio. Very, very impressive player. Absolutely can be a Power 5 player, but doesn't have an Ohio State offer yet. And that's just, it is so, so, so hard to get into that the club Heartline. He is standing there with the clipboard and the earpiece and the velvet rope, and it is very, very hard for guys to get through there at this point. But the guys are lining up outside that velvet rope every time they have a camp, because everyone seems to want to get in there, and that's wide receiver. And here we are, Tony, in the year of the tight end, and there were some very impressive tight ends trying to get into the club as well. 2 guys from the state of Ohio I wanted to at least mention, from kind of diagonally opposite corners of the state of Ohio: Demarion Witten from up near Cleveland in Glenville, and Luka Gilbert from Lakota West down near Cincinnati. Both very impressive. Both have Ohio State offers. Both seem like they could very well be, the Ohio State tight ends in some future year if they tight end at Ohio State.
Yeah, those were 2 guys. Like Luka Gilbert stands out because he's 6'7", 220 odd pounds, and he's still getting bigger. The guy that really impressed me that you did not mention, we didn't talk about before the show, was 2025 tight end Eli Owens out of Tennessee, and he's the number 4 ranked tight end in Rivals rankings. But the thing about him, he's like 6'2", and he doesn't look like a tight end. So when the receivers and the tight ends, they were all working together, and you're like, well, who is this guy who's got a wide receiver height, but he's wider and stronger looking than wide receivers? And then he just went out there and was torching everybody, making catches, and had a really nice one-handed catch down, deep down the field. And that was a guy that, stood out. I think Mark talked to him afterwards, but yeah, I mean, Keenan Bailey is doing some really good things on the recruiting trail and with a tight end position. You talked about the Demarion Witten as well, who I think ran like a 4.65 during his 40-yard dash on one of the camp days. And he's a guy that's going to have to get bigger and stronger, obviously, but he's got the size and the athleticism. And like I said, Luka Gilbert, if tight end doesn't pan out, left tackle you might have to put a lot of weight on him, but he's a big frame. He's a basketball player as well. And so Keenan Bailey is doing pretty well on the recruiting trail right now.
And we'd be remiss to talk about tight ends and tackles without mentioning Landon Pace, the son of Orlando Pace, 2025 tight end. He has an offer as well, and is potentially an Ohio State tight end of the future, but is someone else that I've sort of seen people mention, like, well, if he does continue to grow, he might have some genes that might indicate he could play the tackle position. So we'll see. He is a tight end, and I think by all accounts the plan is to keep him at tight end, but definitely another name to know there as well that will be a familiar one to Buckeye fans. Real quickly, we do need to hit the defensive side of the ball a little bit. I wanted to talk to you, just at least mention 4 names, and then you can kind of riff on whoever you want to riff on. Linebacker Tarvos Alford, no relation to Tony Alford, 2025 linebacker. And 3 cornerbacks, Devin Sanchez, 2025 cornerback. We talked about him with Mark, I believe, earlier in the week. Very, very impressive 5-star who looks and plays like a 5-star. Dorian Brew, 2025, out of Northmont down in the Dayton area. And then Elbert Hill, a 2026 cornerback, in-state corner, who earned an offer. And anytime you get an offer for an in-state player that far out, that always kind of tells me something, Tony.
Yeah, definitely. That's always a sign that, okay, this guy is a legit national recruit. So it'll be interesting to watch him blow up. I think he's only 5'10" at this point, and I know I may have posted the offer on the board, and you get some reactions like, he's only 5'10". Well, he's like 13 years old. I think there's going to be a growth spurt. He's older than that, but to give you an idea, there's still some height to be gained there. But even still, if you're locking guys down and the coaches like you, 5'10" does not concern me, especially in this era where maybe he's a nickel, that sort of thing, and it doesn't matter. Offered an in-state 2026 kid, there's a reason for that. Devin Sanchez, as I'll reiterate what you and Mark have said, like that dude, he's 6'2" corner, moves quicker than that, is really fluid, and just looks really, really good. And then you got Dorian Brew, another 6'2" corner from Ohio, in the same class. If they only recruits from now on 5'10" guys and 6'2" guys at corner, and then they don't want anybody in between. You get the outside guys, you get an inside guy, and boom, you shut it down. But Dorian Brew was, he was right there with Devin Sanchez, maybe a notch below, but that's because of how good Sanchez was. But Dorian Brew was hoping to see the Northmont team at the 7-on-7, but they weren't there on Wednesday. But an outstanding athlete has been offered as a receiver, has been offered as a defensive back, some think corner, some think safety, and he's all in on corner because he understands his frame, his size, a 6'2" corner with that kind of athleticism, that has a higher trajectory than a safety or a receiver. So that's kind of where he's leaning right now.
And you never know exactly where someone is on Ohio State's board, and they're never necessarily, they're not usually going to just come out and tell you. But I remember before the spring game this year, Ryan Day has a limited amount of time. He's walking around, he's talking to people, he's watching the team, he's getting people ready for the game, all that kind of stuff. He saw Dorian Brew on the sideline, made a beeline over to Dorian Brew, and spent quite a while talking to him. And that's usually a pretty good, we always say, watch what they say, watch what they do, not what they say, with recruits. And, you can talk a good game, but who are you going to visit? Well, Ryan Day made an sort of extended unofficial visit with Dorian Brew on the sideline before the spring game today, or this spring. And it was like, okay, well, that is a watch what they do thing. And so, yes, Dorian Brew, definitely a name to know for Ohio State fans moving forward. Another name to know for Ohio State fans moving forward, BuckeyeHuddle.com. That is where Tony and I are writing and posting and photographing and podcasting. And we're joined by Kevin Noon on the team coverage. We're joined by Mark Giffler and Alex Gleitman, who are absolutely killing it on the recruiting beat. Tons of insight, tons of analysis, all that good stuff. Plus Ross, Devin, and Mikey, and Justin, all on the X's and O's, making you a smarter football fan, and a fantastic community, very active, fun community, talking about Ohio State, talking about recruiting, talking about all sorts of other stuff, no politics, but all sorts of other fun stuff going on in the world, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So if you're looking for something to help get you through the next few months, as we head into football season, you want to talk Buckeye football every single day, well, a great place to do that would be at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you on Monday.